Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Ask ServiceMonster show, where you've got questions about your service business and we've got your answers. Today, our ongoing series, The $1 Million Club. We're talking with business owners who have been able to scale their business past that brass ring of $1 million. I've got some amazing interviews lined up. Doug and Jay from Northwest Cleaning will be here. And man, 2.1 million they're headed for this year. Following that, a gentleman from Singapore I just recently picked up on social media who only does high-end commercial properties and restoration of what he calls old girls, 200-year-old buildings that need stone restores, right? So that's going to be very cool. I didn't want to miss another ask. The one from the experience that we cut last week, obviously due to timing, left us 1 week short. And man, that just drives a stake through my heart when we're not consistent about our content, right? So what I decided to do is I've got these great interviews lined up, but let's take a step back and talk about ServiceMonster scale. You guys know my personal story and how I started ServiceMonster, but let's do a deep dive now on how ServiceMonster got from $0 with no venture capital funding and no loans to the $2.4 million company we are today. And we took a couple steps that will translate over to any service business, because at the end of the day, ServiceMonster is a service company. Software as a service. It's built by definition into the name. And even though it didn't have a name when I started this business model back in 2003, customer service was and still remains to this day one of the most important aspects of our service. So, how do we do it? 2003, I'm in the Summerfield Suites in Denver, Colorado. I'm a junior partner at another technical firm, and I can see the writing on the wall. We're not going to survive. The senior partners really don't put their effort into marketing at all, and when this contract is up, they don't have anything on deck, so we're going to starve, right? But as I'm flying back and forth from Sacramento to Denver and spending a week away from my family every week in Denver, I'm sitting at the Summerfield Suites at night and I start coding and I start thinking about the way that we're offering software to small businesses specifically, and it really bothered me. I really wanted to be able to give small businesses that tool. So basically ServiceMonster was born. I didn't want VC capital because I didn't want them to steal my business, and I didn't want loans. I'm not a big believer in that, except if you're talking about property. So I really tried to do this on our own. I left a $120,000 a year job so that I can start this thing, and I pulled a couple colleagues together. Eric McCleskey, he is the COO and basically my pessimistic accountant. He keeps my ass grounded and in check, so I'm not off doing completely crazy stuff with the company. I pulled him in first. We had worked together at a previous company slinging code, and I knew that he had the mindset that could carry us through and help keep me grounded. We also brought in somebody else, an external, not investor. It's not an angel investor. He was a friend of the family who had, a couple tens of thousands sitting around and thought it'd be kind of cool to jump into a software company. He had some experience with carpet cleaning in the past, and so the story really kind of resonated with him. That's how we got our first 6 months of funding. When we forego salaries, we took a dramatic reduction, we controlled our expenses, and on day one, we went and got an EIN, employee identification number. We filed our business, we did all the bells and whistles and hoops that we needed to do, and we created our business bank account before any transactions were made, before any funding was exchanged. At that time, here we are, a brand new fledgling business. We've just left our jobs, Eric and I have, and we're going to see what we can do with what we've got in the bank and a little bit of capital that we've managed to garner by pulling these three people together. So that's how we got our start. And at that point, we were just working like 10 hours a day in my house trying to build up what would be the first version of our product offering. I won't go too deep into the tech and the product because that really doesn't apply to you guys. I'll try to stick to the things that we did that you can directly benefit from. It really is about the relationships, right? I knew I wasn't going fast enough. I needed someone to help me code. David Miller was somebody else that I had worked with in the past that I had a lot of respect for. And so I reached out to him to see if we can work out a deal. And he worked for us for free for 6 months. Eric let him live in his house as a roommate rent-free. You see how all this all puzzles together. So everybody's making massive sacrifice in order to get this thing off the ground. Now we've got 2 engineers, myself and David, and Eric is helping put things together like some of the CRM tools or the documentation and some of the early things that we were doing, kind of the systems and the process, the accounting, right? All that kind of stuff. So we're building. Interestingly enough, we were building a desktop software. You installed it on your desktop. It wasn't web-based, but the data was web-based. Again, I won't go too technical. It's pretty cool stuff though. We scrapped that. Before we released that to the public, and we had spent a good 9 months just really building hard, no profit. We hadn't sold anything. We were just, basically eating ramen and noodles. We decided to scrap the project. We knew web was where it was going to be, and it was a really gutsy move, and one we know we didn't have any money to do. We had no business making that decision, but we did it anyway. And so we went back to work trying to build a web-based version of our product. We knew we were out of track. And so we started hunting for friends and family again. And at that point, we pulled in another partner. And from an outside point of view, they don't work, the 2 external partners don't work in the company, but they definitely helped us early with our financial situation. So Jason came in, threw a little cash for a little percentage of the company, and that's the makeup. We have 5 owners, all that came in and provided either sweat equity and or a little bit of cash and or everybody across the board made sacrifices in order to push us through. So at that point, middle of 2004, we actually have a product that we can start offering towards the end of 2004. So now an interesting thing happens. We're starting to generate revenue. Obviously, it doesn't cover our expenses at all, but it starts to ease the burden. And it's just baby steps, right? Getting used to that reduced lifestyle. I had to convince my wife, and I knew that my 2 kids would suffer. Now they're the older kids of the 5. And we just fought through it. We had to. There was really no other option. And we did that until Q4 2009. In the 4th quarter of 2009, we finally had our first profitable quarter. It was 2010 was our first profitable year. Starting at the end of 2003, that's a long haul. And we did a lot of things to push us through to that point, and we suffered the entire time. And there's just no other way around it. And at that point, reaching profitability, we were finally able to start applying positive horsepower, right? So we weren't taking money out of the company. Instead, as our profitability started to grow, we'd fold that back into the company to hire the next employee, which would help us grow, which would give us more revenue, which would give us a little more profit. We take that profit, hire the next person. And so we kept that cycle going we still, to this day, keep that cycle going in a big way. We may be skimming just a little bit off the top in the form of dividends at the end of the year, but it's really minimal, really helping to apply for taxes, take care of our tax situation, because if we have any revenue, obviously the owners are going to have a tax liability associated with that. So just pushing forward and trying different things. We had to make a pivot change in 2009 in order to reach profitability. And that's about when we started offering Fill My Schedule services. It was another product line that we could offer to our current client base with a decent margin that helped get us the horsepower we needed. It took 2 more years to reach $1 million. So in 2012, we cleared $1 million. That was the first year we cleared $1 million. And then we did, for the next 2 years, 50% growth. It was pretty amazing. So very excited about that. And then 2015 and 16, because if you're paying attention, we're at 2.4 now. If we did 50%, that puts us at 2 million at 2014. So between 2014 to 2016, 2.4 million. You saw the slow growth there, right? So we definitely slowed down, but that was intentional. We took a breath in while we're working on our internal systems. We just wanted to make sure we were paying the bills and coasting, growing a little bit while we were building up ServiceMonster 6. So that's the story, guys. It's just struggle. It's just every day, making sure your shit's in order from day one, like getting the bank account set up and making sure you're paying yourself a salary, sacrificing as much as possible in order to grow that business so that later down the road, when you're sitting here, you have the horsepower to really drive it. Because if you're thinking about what I keep saying, we're headed to 30 million over the next 5 years. How am I going to do that with, under 10% growth over the last 2 years? Well, that's a story for another show. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for paying attention. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go check out the demo and give us a call.